Oh man, I hate making videos like this because the whole thing is literally just in response to criticism. Kendrick Lamar is slated to be selling 287,000 copies first week. These are not numbers that surprise me. And the reason these numbers don't surprise me is because I predicted this. I said on stream about a week or two ago that it was likely that Kendrick would do anything between 250 to 375, 400K first week. This doesn't surprise me, okay? The album is more downtrodden. The beats don't hit as hard as the ones that were on Damn. If we go back and we look at the To Pimp a Butterfly album sales, it was only a little over 320K. I'm not saying that that's not, amazing for an artist that was of Kendrick's size at the time. The reason I don't want Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers being compared to Damn in a conversation of album sales is because Damn, number one, had bundles, it had physicals. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers has none of that. Number two, the time gap between To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn was only, 2 years. It wasn't that long of a wait. People were still dissecting and breaking down To Pimp a Butterfly by the time Damn was announced. So that was a very healthy, release schedule after the previous record that he had already dropped. Nothing too crazy. You think every song on Damn ended up making the Billboard Hot 100 just because it was Kendrick Lamar? No, those songs were hype. They had tons of energy. The beats were crazy. They were modern. They were indicative of the times that we are in. They weren't based off of anything poetic. They weren't based off of Kendrick trying to deliver a message. Even though the messaging in Damn was still poignant, it was still powerful. It was something that casual hip hop fans could get behind when listening to a Kendrick Lamar record, which is why it was received so well. But if you take away Damn's physical sales from those first week numbers, it looks very close to Pimp a Butterfly. And again, I hate having to defend this album because as an album, as a full Kendrick Lamar experience, I feel that it is his weakest in my opinion. And I will go into it again when the final thoughts come out sometime next week. But I don't remember when hip hop got to the space of requiring an artist do a certain amount of numbers before we determine whether or not their album was a success or a loss to them. In business, a loss is considered you having a negative, you not having a net positive. That is what a loss is. Even when Jack Harlow released his record, Come Home, the Kids Miss You, I wasn't surprised that it did 115K first week. I expected it to do those numbers. Anyone saying that it was going to do 200, I thought was fucking insane. But it doing 100K, which is literally double his previous record, is a W. And people made it seem like because he got outsold by Future in Future's second week that somehow it was an L for Jack Harlow. How? Only in the realm of social media will people try to convince you that someone is doing bad from an objective point of view, that their money is hurting, their pockets are hurting. This means that they'll be homeless in 3 weeks, they have to vacate their premises, and their family can no longer eat or provide for themselves. When you can literally prove based off of analytics that this person is doing just fine or better than they've ever been doing. Was the album trash? Sure, but did he still sell well? Of course. Why are we spinning the narrative? What is this rubric based off of? I get that we don't have this standard for Kanye because Kanye's success is perceived as something that is unattainable to the average hip-hop artist. Kanye's success is unattainable to the average entrepreneur. So when you see Kanye West not have great sales first week or sales that are as comparable as the other big three in the music industry when it comes to hip-hop or when it comes to rap music, you look at him as a success story because he's still highly valuable in fashion, highly valuable as a producer. He's multifaceted. So we look at him as, oh, well, he's not hurting for cash anywhere because this isn't his main revenue source anyway. Kanye probably loses money making music. I've seen these Kendrick Lamar sales compared to Uzi first week, and I'm like, people were waiting for Eternal to take for 5 years. The more and more time I give this Kendrick Lamar record, the more I appreciate it from the standpoint of how people react to it, not necessarily the music itself, because I'm still on the fence about a lot of things that I was on the fence about when I first heard the record. It's about expectation. Kendrick Lamar never said back in 2017 that he would be releasing an album in May of 2022. So where people came up with this 5-year wait, this 5-year window, is crazy to me. Yes, we have gone 5 years without a Kendrick Lamar record, but he said nothing about dropping that album within the last 5 years. I've been anticipating a release from Kendrick Lamar for a very long time, every year since Damn came out. But your anticipation is not a rollout. You making it seem like because you expected this album for 5 years, that your level of anticipation for this record equals Kendrick Lamar's rollout for it, and now because he's selling 286 first week, that means he's been rolling it out for the past 5 years? No. Is this rubric of success based off of the constant comparisons to Drake? Because if we take Drake out of the picture and stop comparing every artist who drops an album first week and we look at their sales to Drake, wouldn't every artist be doing well by definition? Are we then going to change the goalposts and start comparing Drake to Eminem and calling every Drake release post views, which did 1 million first week, a failure? This numbers comparison irks me because it's just so asinine. It literally means nothing. Now let's take into account the fact that if you are musically inactive, or you're inactive in any medium that you are popular in for 5 years, the likelihood of you coming back and doing the same numbers that you did before, or being just as successful as you were before with very little hype, very little energy, is just not it's not possible. People grow, people move on. I was 21 years old when Damn came out. I am 26 now. There are some people who were 25 when Damn came out, and now they're 30. They have 2 children and a wife. Things change, time change, people along with it. So a Kendrick Lamar release, a Kendrick Lamar record may not be on plenty of people's radar the way it was before. Pair that into the fact that there is a new artist every week, a new artist doing a new thing for the newer generation all the time. No one's sitting around waiting, refreshing the Kendrick Lamar Apple Music page to see whether or not he's dropping an album. Is he dropping or not? Cool. I don't care. Does this mean people forgot about him? No, but it's just he's not high up on the priority list anymore, and Kendrick knows that. And I think it's beneficial for artists to take longer breaks with their album releases to see who's genuinely there for their music and who's there for the hype, who's there for the controversy, who's there for the madness, who's there for the bullshit. We don't have this conversation about Pusha T, who I think sold 186,000 or well over 150K for Daytona, and then 4 years later when he drops his recent record, it does around 52, 53K first week. We don't have this conversation about Pusha T, who arguably, in my opinion, put out a better record than Kendrick this year. We don't have that conversation about Pusha T. Why? Because of expectation. This isn't one of those failures where you can clearly tell that a label has a lot of hype and a lot riding off of an artist's success, so they put all the resources and tools into marketing this artist heavily so that as many people can see them and many people can hear their music as humanly possible. And then their album releases and then no one buys it. That's not what we're looking at here. These are artists that are making their own music that don't have a rollout generally, or if they do, the rollout is pretty much diminished to them dropping 1 or 2 singles and then eventually dropping the album. Kendrick announced this album with a tweet and got people prepared for it with the Heart Part 5. That was it. No different than his previous releases. The only reason there is a conversation regarding this being an L or it being a W or Kendrick Lamar falling off at this point is because of people's expectations. And it angers me so much to have had to listen to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers and Kendrick Lamar tell people to literally drop their level of expectation from him just for them to go back and literally let people know that they didn't listen to the fucking record at all. I don't think artists that we've been listening to have been so much more obvious when letting people know that they don't want people outside of their main demographic listening to it than ever before. With these artists dropping little tweets and little subtle hints that they might be dropping music soon, it's clear that they want the people who want to listen to the music to listen to the music. And that's it. I said off first listen that this record did not have the replayability of a lot of Kendrick Lamar's older work. That doesn't make it bad by default because of that. That just means that people more frequently are going to have to be much more considerate when determining what settings this music is appropriate to play in, because a lot of it is very heavy, a lot of it is very trauma ridden, a lot of it goes very deep into certain societal issues that most people in most social circles aren't going to be discussing on average. And I'm sure Kendrick knew that when dropping this record. I'm not surprised that people aren't overlooking the messages in this music. When determining first week sales, shouldn't we also look into the artist's demographic, who they're likely targeting with the music that they're making, the music on the record, for instance? All of these things should be looked at when determining whether an artist's release is counted as a win or a loss. For instance, if you are a Drake and you make music that has the lines, "Heard you was a lesbian girl, me too," I would expect records like that to do generally well in social settings, to be playful in the background. If that type of record sells 150K from Drake first week, then yes, that is a dud. Kendrick Lamar, who's been popularized by his social messages, who's been popularized by his conceptuality for the most part, and who's done numbers within the exact same realm of this 286 for the past 7 to 8 years, should not be counted or even perceived as, oh my God, he's really falling off. I don't get you people, bro. We are not A&Rs. We're not music labels. We're not execs. So this information should not matter to the average everyday person. But when we start shifting the conversation from who had the best record and who made the best music to who sold the most, why wouldn't artists just start making music for the lowest common denominator? If all that mattered was selling the most records and selling the most copies of your music, wouldn't that quickly shift the music industry into like one mind and one body, where you would have no variation, variety, or difference in conceptuality at any point? I just think it's a dangerous precedence to set, especially for newer artists that are coming in. Denzel Curry is another shining example of such, who released a record that was similar in concept to Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Guess what he sold first week? Between 13 to 16K, something like that. Y'all remember when Nicki Minaj had that breakdown not too long ago when her Queen sales came in comparison to Travis Scott and his bundles, bro? Like, this is just not a healthy conversation for artists to even look at or consider. Make the music you want to make, and the people who want to listen to it will be there to listen to it. Just drop music. That's it. Just drop music.